kind of used my grandmommy's idea of quilting as my basis for my artwork.
What was her idea for quilting?
She just cut some patterns and put them together. She didn't say, I'm going to put red over here. I need 2 reds here, yellow here, orange here. She just cut the patterns and she said, go over there and get me my patterns and bring them here. And she sew them together. Like, okay, that's the way I do. I say, with my grandmama's hands, I do all my artwork. You know, she was the master. Mm-hmm. And so I learned from the master. I didn't know I was learning from the master, but I did. So I incorporate all of that, and I think I've overstocked in the gallery studio, I call it. But I had a sign out that I made say, okay, Grandma, let's get busy. When I get stuck, I'm like, okay, Grandma, let's get busy. You know, she said, I'm here, boy, let's go. I'm ready to rock and roll. Hello, welcome. My name is Ulysses Marshall. I was born in 1946 in a small segregated town of Georgia, Vienna. I was born into a family, father, mother, and later 2 additional sisters. My education and growth was from the South. My relatability was from my growth in the South. My parents were not educated. My mother was probably 5th grade. My father did not attend school at all, so they were domestic workers. My early remembering of my childhood was my father worked in a lumber yard. And as a child, there were other families that lived in that area. And we all bonded based on our income and lovability of each other. I grew up in a small area in the South where it was a real village, where we learned to respect our elders and respect our community. Each time that we were in the company of an elder, we had to acknowledge them. Yes, no ma'am, yes, sir. And they kept a vigil on us whenever we would go from one area of the town to the other. And if we were mischievous before we got home, that parent would have called my mother and said I had disrespected her.
So when you were a kid growing up and hanging out with your grandmom, did you have a vision for what you thought your life would be like?
No, did not.
None at all.
Mm-mm.
You think, I'm going to be an astronaut, I'm going to be a fireman, I'm going to be, none of those?
I'm just going to be the kid that makes it fly for my grandma. I didn't have, I mean, I didn't know of any opportunities. What was teacher or social worker, postman, that kind of thing. It wasn't like high aspirations. I didn't go to college to get my own business. I'm going to go and be an astronaut. That was nothing. There was no select group of opportunities posted in the school to say, well, you can be this or you can be that. It was not. You can graduate and go to college.
Well, you said that when you went to college, even though you were in the top 10
High school.
Of high school, but you weren't prepared for college. So do you think that they didn't assume that you guys would go to college?
Oh no, everybody in my class almost went to college. I wasn't prepared because most of the kids were looking to probably go to college, had taken all the necessary entrance examinations. I had not prepared that way to go.
I see.
I was looking at, if I'm getting into a college, am I going to be able to afford to stay there? That was my concern. Not that I was like, oh, you can do a college loan. It was not like, oh, I didn't know some of that information at the time.
Was this a segregated high school that you went to?
Mm-mm. We were all black.
Okay.
Segregated,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so it was all black.
All
Was
black.
there a white school
Yeah.
in town as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
White school, black school. We got the hand-me-downs from. We were a good school, though. Great principal. A lot of kids went to college from his program, from his school. That was encouraged to better yourself. And how do you do that? Is to get a college education, not bow down and consider yourself not worthy, second class. And like with kids that were on sharecroppers' land, he would get in his Cadillac car and drive over to Mr. Bubba and say, look, that kid needs to be on the bus Monday morning at my school and not out here in the field working for you. Yep,
Wow.
he would do that. He was a bad little guy. And he didn't take a whole lot of junk. He might have eaten some cheese, but he didn't eat a whole lot of cheese. No, he was really, I mean, we were like he was ex-military, so the school was run like a military academy. We walked down the halls quietly. He had installed intercom systems in the school so that he would call a teacher out and he'd turn the intercom on. So if you were making noise, he'd let you know. Ulysses Marshall, shut your mouth. You know, that kind of thing. And I was, I did plays in high school. I did band. I was a drum major. I was president of the senior class. And I was rebellious as a president of the senior class. Like we had to sell stuff for this or sell stuff. I wouldn't do it. I refused to do it. I did manuscript rather than cursive writing for my term paper in English. And she said, you're not going to get a grade to graduate if you're not. I was like, I'm not writing this over. I just won't graduate. I'm not writing it. Mom said, I said, I'm not writing it over. I did all this research. She should have said write in cursive. She didn't. She said the term paper needs to be turned in at extra time. I turned it in. I spent all these pages printing, you know. No. And I was such a rebellious little boy and didn't follow orders till our principal came on the intercom one time. I was supposed to be doing something. I didn't do it. He said, Ulysses Marshall, I wouldn't recommend you for the S house. Okay.
Well, so the military must have been a rude awakening for a rebellious kid.
No, I could follow orders. You know, it's just that when I found that they weren't necessary, I didn't do it. You know. I tried to grow grass back here, and I can't. So sitting on the deck is like, hey, once we have company, we're sitting on the deck to just look at emptiness. I figure, well, I'll just do sculpturing. But then what happened that I went to the class. It's a class. It's like 6:30 to 9:30, Mondays and Wednesdays. And I went to class on a Monday as a beginner. And the instructor came out and he had the syllabus and all of this. I said, shit, I ain't doing it. I came home and told Brittany, I'm quitting. She said, you haven't even been to class for an hour. I'm quitting. So I went in early on a Wednesday, and there were no students there. I said, look, I'm just informing you, I'm quitting. I'm not going back. I'm not coming back. He said, why are you not coming back to class? I just wanted to learn to weld. I'm not interested in going to visit a museum. I've done all of that stuff. I'm way beyond that. I'm not writing about some artist. I'm not looking at Western art. That's not my thing. I'm looking at Marshall blackness. How am I going to present my artwork in my own color and my own identity? So there it is. He said, just go back there and start welding. I said, I don't know what to do. So I got a mask, I got the gloves, I got all that fireproof stuff. I went back and started welding. And the first piece I welded, I was so proud of it. I spent all this 3 hours or more welding it, man. Welding. And then he said, like the garage, it's a garage door with a concrete platform. He said, go throw that out there was like, what? You got to be kidding me. I'm going to throw it out. All this time he said, throw it out there. I just looked at him and said, what? He said, throw it out there. Bang, thing fell apart. He said, now you know why? I said, well, I can't do like you've been teaching me to follow the lines and all. I said, I'm doing it for myself. I'm not doing it for an exhibition. I'm doing it for the backyard. And the backyard will be the judge of my creativity. And so far, it has allowed itself to be involved in my creation. No, these are some auto parts. I was going to the auto place to get junk, and they won't let me in because they changed ownership.
But you can't throw these in the yard, in the driveway, because they'll fall apart.
No, they're well together.
So you did learn how to do it. Okay.
Learned. Some will fall apart, but who knows? It's only me. Okay, in 1964, I graduated from Vienna High and Industrial School in Vienna, Georgia, at which point I moved to Atlanta to live with my uncle and to secure a job in order to educate myself at the college level. I had not basically prepared for college entrance. Although I graduated top 10 in my high school, I looked at going to college, but I also knew that financially it would probably become a strain. So one afternoon after living in Atlanta with my uncle, I had to take my grandmother to an appointment. I also had an appointment for a job opportunity to try and begin tuition fee. I was basically accepted at a college in Atlanta. I had not taken the whatever those tests were. I had not taken that. So in reference to taking my grandmother to her appointment coming back, I was very upset. And I passed the recruiting station as we were riding the bus. And when I got my grandmother back to safety, I went back on the bus, took the bus back to the recruiting station and joined the military.
Just on impulse. Wait a minute. I don't understand. Why were you angry?
Because I had to take my grandmama to an appointment my uncle should have taken her, because I had an appointment for possibly employment.
So you missed the opportunity for the job.
For the job. And then I just rode the bus back up to the recruiting station and asked a couple of questions and looked at a couple of the Marine Corps, and I looked at the Navy, and then I looked at the Army, and the guy said, well, the draft is coming up. You have a great possibility that you can get drafted. But if you wanted to enlist, you can go ahead and volunteer. You can enlist for 2 years rather than 4. So I chose to do the 2 years, and I didn't tell anyone, and my papers came home and said, you have been drafted into the U.S. Army. All my family was, I was like, okay, fine, I'm gone. And so I went. That's how I got into the military.
But the Vietnam War had not yet started, right?
It was I had no idea about Vietnam. I finished all of my training, and then I went to jump school, which is paratrooping, in Fort Benning, Georgia. And after completing and getting my jump wings, we were held at bay for an introduction from the base commander, which came in and said, our company, the graduates of this particular segment of class will be going to Vietnam. And so everybody look around and say, where's Vietnam? I don't know anything about Vietnam. And how they prepared us for Vietnam was like really interesting. We were confined to the base. We couldn't go past and go home. Parents had to come to the base to visit with us before we departed. We were shown a movie. We went into the bleachers and sat down, and the commander came in and talked briefly about Vietnam. Some of our duties, we would be performing guard duty around the air base, and showed us the women of Vietnamese women, and all of us young 17-year-olds were hot in the pants and ready to go. And
what year was this?
64. I went in 64. I went to Vietnam in 1964 to 65. And then after ETSing, I came back stateside.
What's ETS?
It was my term of duty was over. But after arriving in Vietnam with some of the guys that I went to jump school with, we were broken up and went into different companies. And the company, I think I went into Charlie Company. I kind of put that stuff in the graveyard. I went to Charlie Company, and we were based in a barrack at the air base for a while. And at night, we heard the artillery rounds coming in, and all of us on the floor looking real scared and probably messy pants and stuff like that, because we had no idea what was happening. All we heard were rounds coming in towards our position. And so the next day we were processed and put into our units. From there, trying to recall all of this information, from our units then, we were assigned to a squad, like 4 squads. And my first patrol, when I was there, you couldn't chamber a round into your weapon unless you were fired upon first. And my training was in America with an M14, and when I got to Vietnam, they gave me an M16, which I had never before in my life seen and didn't know how to operate. So my first combat experience, they had me on point, which is a couple of meters out in front of the rest of the group. And we were fired upon. And in my very first firefight, I didn't know how to use my weapon because no one had told me how to use the new weapon that they had given me. So I thought it didn't work. And so I just threw it down on the ground, got behind a tree with my helmet down, and tried to dig a hole into the ground. I was yelled at when I got back to camp, and I told my sergeant that I had no idea how the weapon worked. No one had ever given me instructions. And so from that point on, I was introduced into a combat situation where the rounds were live and people were dying, and it was no longer training that you could simulate death and get up and go and brush yourself off. As I always say, war is not a TV or movie game. It is individual lives at stake, and you learn to be very, very aware of your surroundings, pay attention to what's going on, to the environment that you're in. But you had to deal with other elements. You had to deal with the monsoon rain. You had to deal with insects. Certain patrols you would go on, the leeches would attach to your body. And so you come back in the morning, you have to de-leech, salt on them, get your bayonet and cut them off. They're bloodsuckers. I had to deal with bats when you go in certain areas in the caves. At night, it would be quiet during the day, early daylight, and then at nighttime, it would be like thousands of bats flying all around you. And you couldn't do anything. You had to be quiet and sit there. Or you go, I call it mosquito heaven, where they put the mosquito nets. We'll take the mosquito nets and mosquito ourselves down, and all you hear at night is mosquitoes buzzing in your ears. And then every time we were in the rubber plantation, you had to deal with frogs, deal with army ant, big jokers hang up in the trees, and you pass by and they drop down on you. The elements is jungle. We never travel on a road. We always travel in the jungle. So you could see a road next to your right or left, but you stayed in the jungle. The roads were dangerous. They didn't know if they were booby traps or... War is a burden that most of us will bear until we're dead. The memories of war, the memories of the smell of death. Anytime you go out in the field on a mission, you knew somebody was going to die. And you became well aware of that. You just didn't know if it was going to be you. So what do? You go out and complete your mission. And you lose buddies, and you hear screaming, and you never left anyone that was either wounded or dead. You had to you had to bring them back into camp. Search and destroy missions, you go in and look for the enemy. And usually there were a lot of women and kids, and all the men were gone. They were either North Vietnamese, Viet Cong, or sympathizers. So there were not that many fighting men in the village. So search and destroy, you destroy it. You go in and you burn the rice. You might burn the village. You might shoot the buffalo. That's all part of war. So war is inhuman. It's you become a hunter, and then at times you're the hunted. So that's the role reversal. I was there 11 and a half months. I was wounded on a search and destroy mission, which we were to go in early morning and come out midday during our lunch break. We were told there was an elite unit of Viet Cong trained by Chinese and Russian advisors. And if you encounter those, you encounter hell. They just don't move. They just fight you all damn day. So once we had finished lunch and we were getting ready to be heli-lifted back to the unit, that was my 11 and a half months. I had 6 more months to go before I could rotate back to the States. And we were ambushed in a horseshoe formation, and we were not prepared for the firefight which occurred. We were kind of relaxed, getting ready to go to the choppers to be lifted out. And they were horseshoed. I could hear them talking. And that day it was just raining death. And I was shot 3 times. So a couple of guys and myself had decided before going to those search and destroy units, we would all get together and kind of psych ourselves out. If we were shot anything, we would feel no pain. So when I got shot, that was the first thing that came to my mind. You got to repeat, you feel no pain, you feel no pain, you feel no pain. Although the bullets burn, you want to say, ow, they're hot. I didn't feel any pain until I got shot in the shoulder. I got shot in the shoulder with the shrapnel from an American drop bomb because we were so close with the enemy, we could hear them talking. But one thing that day that I will never ever forget, I'm gonna probably tear. I cried because some of my buddies were killed, and I never saw them again. But one of the things that I remember, and I did a painting that is with the National Vietnam Museum called Blue Angels. As I was laying on the ground, first of all, my buddy and myself, we went to high school together. He was pointing, he got shot straight through the chest. And he stood up and was taking off his web gear. And I was calling and crying to him to get down. We were way out in front of everybody. And so I went out and got him, put him on my shoulder, and was running back in, was hollering American coming through so they wouldn't kill us. And then once I got him to the medic coming to us got shot. And then after the medic got shot, I got shot. So, but laying on the ground there, wounded and not really knowing if we were going to ever get out of that situation, I saw the heavens open up. And this beautiful tune, I've never heard a tune like that before. This beautiful tune, you could hear it. I could hear this tune. And then the skies parted, and these huge angels with these long golden horns. I think you get that from church about angels. They didn't have wings. They were just huge. They were big, big, big. I don't know if they're male or female. They were huge. And they were playing this really, really beautiful music. And those guys that had died were ascending up into heaven. And I could just see their bodies going up into heaven. And then at some point I passed out. Next thing I woke up, I was in the hospital. My good buddy dragged my butt out.
The one who was shot dragged you out?
No, the one that was shot. I saw him years later.
So you saved his life. So you saved his life.
Yeah. I was at home when he started. I was home in Georgia. My mom and I were sitting on the porch, and somebody pulled up and hollered, "Homie!" And oh man, that's my boy from Vietnam. Because I was there first, and when he came, I was in the chow line, and somebody hollered, "Hey, homie! Hey, homie!" I'm like, "Homie? That's my buddy in the band called homie." So that was he, and so we were in the same unit, same squad. And so he came.
You said SCORE, same score?
Same unit, same.
And it's called a squad?
Yeah, squad.
Oh, okay.
We was in the same squad, and so we embraced. But my man that pulled me out, John Hawk Shooter, was an Indian, and he pulled my butt out, and I cried when he went back in. I told him, "Please don't go. You're gonna get killed today." But he didn't. He got wounded. He came to see me when I was in the hospital at Walter Reed, and we lost contact. And one afternoon, I'm sitting out here, and I said, "Let me try to find Hawk Shooter." He had died, and I just like head up.
But not in Vietnam. He died.
He died of wounds he received in Vietnam.
He did.
Yeah. So, no, I sit out here and mourned his loss and had a couple of drinks and cried and moved on. So, it's interesting when people say, "Thank you for your service." I say, "You're welcome." And I don't know if they understand what we went through. They just see the cap and say, "Thank you for your service." And I said, "Okay, fine." And I think the funniest thing is I got a Purple Heart. And so I got a cap with a Purple Heart on it, Vietnam Veterans Purple Heart, my jump wings. And I was in a store and a lady said, "You got a Purple Heart." I said, "Yes." She said, "How did you get it?" I said, "On a Cracker Jack box." I opened it up and there it was. So I said, "Oh, shoot, what is this?" I kept it. I've learned to have fun with it. I don't talk about it a lot. I don't hang around with a lot of vets, go to vet events and things like that. All of our experiences were different, although we were in the same units. The thing about Vietnam, which is interesting, there were racial divides. My sergeant called me a little splib all the time. A little splib, and I call him a hunky. Now, the thing about that is you can have your differences. You can have fights. The guys fight each other in camp. You can have those things. But once you go in the field, all that stuff is put aside. Because the guy to your right and to your left are your lifesavers. You depend upon them, they depend upon you. So all that black, white, segregation, you can do that in the camp. You can go on pass with your black buddies and the white boys go and do what they do. The black ones go do what they do. But in the field, we were a mixed pot of rice and beans. Black beans and rice. That's what we were, We're fighting to stay alive. You get back to camp, you drink a couple of beers together, you get ready to go on another mission. So it's constantly going, it's constantly being, I mean, you look at death all the time. I mean, I think sometimes now I look and say, I wonder when I die, how I'm going to die. And can I talk to anyone and say, well, I'm dead, but and I died seeing them asleep. A car hit me and I died. It's that notion that you never really know when the bell rings for you. So you can't really be prepared for death. You have to acknowledge that death is available and that you are facing it all the time. For 11 and a half months, every day is death. So you kind of get used to it. In a way, I mean, you have to take those fears and push them aside. Because if you have fears, you lose control, you lose concentration. And concentration is what keeps you alive. You listen to sounds, you pay attention to trees, you pay attention to movement of the grass, sounds on the ground that you're making. You pay attention to everything. You learn to pay attention. You learn how to be quiet at night if you're on patrol, ambush patrol. You can't talk. You can't see sometimes the person next to you. You have to reach over and touch them. It's so dark. Hey, man, you asleep? I'm hoping you're not asleep, when it's time for you to be up and watching. So it's a lot that goes into going to war. It's a lot to be young to go there. It makes you stronger in a sense. Sometimes I might get into a situation and I will say, hey, I will survive Vietnam. So this right here is nothing. It's like, it doesn't call for stress. It doesn't call for a lot. It just calls for making an evaluation, making the right decisions and choices about certain situations that happens in life. And you use that experience that you have gained from being born to where I sit now. You just use the experience. And if you have no experience to use, then you get yourself into horrible situations. But it was a teaching experience. It makes you appreciate life. It makes you appreciate the lives of others. The thing that makes it difficult are people who have not had the experience to make judgments of those that serve. It's hard to see, like, the administration whose leader avoided going to Vietnam talk about the military, disrespect the military, but uses it as a pawn for his own convenience. Talked about John McCain, who was a hero, Vietnam POW, suffered severely. What it does for families who's lost their kids. What message does that go forth to those people? Or the ones that are maimed or lost limbs, or who are, dependent upon others to take care of them, organizations to take care of them, or the VA hospitals and VA organizations that they're trying to cut budgets from. It makes you want to throw up,
Why are you not full of rage?
Because I'm mature. I've grown up. I've looked at situations and evaluated situations and things that, and I hate to say it, things that I don't have any control over. I can offer an opinion and I can participate in the change and hope for change and say that you have given what you could to this organization or to this movement or whatever. And because I participated, I think at 100%, I'm like, I did what I could. The change has to be more so a group experience from not just African Americans or white, just like the current situation. If we all sit back and allow what's happening to happen, and I complain to you about it, you complain, it'll never change. You know, what will change when everybody decides, hey, and for an example, and I always use this example when I'm talking, General George Armstrong Custer, old yellow hair, led his troops destroying the land, killing up the Indians. He was invincible, you know, could nobody touch him. Currently, didn't listen to anyone. He was the man in charge, you know. He knew how to do stuff. So what happened to Little Bighorn? The Indians say, I use the word, fuck this guy. Okay? We're going to all get together. We're going to smoke some weed, and we're going to fuck him up. And here he comes, charging Little Bighorn. What happened to Custer? Bam. What happened to the long yellow hair flowing in the wind? Scalp. People just have to wake up when it starts to affect the lives of others. And one thing I think in this era, people are going to begin to realize that they are no better off than the immigrants. That they're no better off. When you can't provide health care, you can't provide food, you can't provide the services that you were getting for grandma who's sitting over here needing medication, or grandpa needs to go to the hospital, or whatever, and you don't have the money for that, then what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to say? Who are you going to call up? You know, you said it's okay to rape America. It doesn't affect me. I was reading a story where two brothers were talking on the phone, and one brother said he voted for the administration, and he voted for immigrants leaving, and he voted for health care to be this and his brother said, and he said, oh yeah, well my family's covered. I'm fine. Them ain't covered. I'm fine. The brother said, you have insurance? He said, yeah, whatever insurance, certain states have different names for their insurance. But he said, oh, you know, you don't have that anymore. Oh, what? Here I am praising, and I don't have coverage because, you know, I'm just following the crowd. I'm just following the crowd. And the crowd, let me go back to the crowd. I'm in New York with my nephew, and he's at his girlfriend's home. And we take the subway, and I have no idea where I am, right? So he says, there's a little concert going on. All right, you stay here. I'm going to go over to her house, and I'll be back. Okay, music is playing. I'm sitting there looking around. All of a sudden, people get up and start running. I get up and start running, too. So I'm running down the street, and I'm thinking, I do not know where I am. How is he going to find me? So as the crowd kind of decreased their speed, I asked one person running beside, I said, why are we running? He said, I don't know. Everybody else is running. So that's the way the world works. That's the way mega works. I don't know why I wear the red hat, but it looks good on my head. What the hell? You wear a red hat, I'm going to wear a red hat too. Why are you wearing a red hat? I don't know, because she's wearing a red hat. I'm wearing a red hat.
I just like to correct that I'm not wearing a red hat.
I know you're not. I know you're not. But that's the idea of group involvement. You know, you just run with the crowd because they're running. You don't know why until it's too late. Oh, I run so far, now I'm lost. How is he going to find me? How am I going to find him? It is nighttime somewhere in New York City. So eventually I find my way back to the bleachers and sit down.
Never found out why they were running.
It doesn't matter. I'm back to the bleachers, so I'm where I'm supposed to be. I don't know what happened to the crowd. They still running. Probably the day they might run through here. They still running. Hey, y'all still running. Okay. They got some water. But life is very complicated.
Yes, it is.
And with my son, or with my sons, and with my daughters, I try to give them the best advice that I can. My wife and I try to provide them with the best that we could afford to give to them. An education, a nice home, opportunities to excel in their fields of endeavor, a place to feel safe, to be able to express themselves, to bring their friends to express themselves. But also making good choices and decisions, making good choices about relationships that you're in, about the peers that you run with, the way you project yourself into the community. Like my son, who went to law school, he's a lawyer. I brought him in here and I said, look, man, I know the style is young men are walking around with their pants down to their knees. As a black person, we're all in the same wash pot. Whites have the opportunity to be in different pots, but black culture, one black person do everything, everybody is black is blamed. We're in the same pot. So I said, if the police stops you, he looks at you the same as the young man that's not going to law school. So what decisions do you have to consider here? This is what you are planning for your future. Are you planning for your future to be harassed by the police? Or are you planning for your future to be a bright, prosperous life? And the choice that you have to make, because you don't wear your pants down, that doesn't mean that you are less than equal. No one has said to him, man, pull up your pants. Just pull up your pants, man. It's okay. Like my daughter's friends from Hampton, nice black African-American boys, nice. I ain't come here, their pants down. Come here, guys, come here. I got a wife inside, I got a daughter inside. I don't know if your drawers are clean or not. I don't want to know if they're clean or not. So when you open the door, you pull your pants up. You come in, you guys are respectful, we like you. That's the only problem that I have. Now, when you open the door to leave, you can go naked if you want to. That's fine. That's fine. But for my daughter and my wife, it's called respect. It's called respect. I don't understand. I went into a burger place and the young man serving had his pants down. I'm looking at his drawers. I'm looking at the manager. She ain't say nothing. I said, bye. Why do I want to go in and patronize somebody whose butt I'm looking at to fix me a sandwich? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. So the teachings that we receive in our homes, in our community, is most important to African American males. The problem is, in today's society, you just cannot walk up to an African American male and say, hey man, you're looking great if you pull your pants up. You're looking great if you stop using the language that you're using on the street. It's okay if you've been in prison, you don't have to announce to the world that I just got out of jail. That's your personal stuff. That's the choice that you make to get into difficulty. It's difficult to say that now because you don't know the response that you're going to get. So you just let it go. You just let it go. Those that you do and can say something to, you address that. But we have been dehumanized so long. I mean, we live in crowded conditions. If we can't afford to have an opportunity to have a nice, decent job. I mean, we are talked about being not fatherly, not taking care of our children. We are the most incarcerated group in the world. I mean, just look at the baggage, look at the luggage that we carry. Just look at the luggage that we carry. Well, it is incredible. And whenever something happens, old American apple pie, go there and pull that cassette tape out and put it in and look at John Smith. I mean, he's been in prison for 500 years. What do they play on the news? Blacks aren't the only one that hijack cars. Blacks aren't the only one that use drugs. Blacks aren't the only ones but what they show all on the news. Who does the police kill? Blacks. And justified, So we as African American males have we've been through a lot, but we will continue to survive. We will be down, but we ain't gonna be broken, and be knowing to this new group of people that are in control, they have to understand our history. I mean, we've been through slavery. We've been through Jim Crow. We've been through the civil rights where Lester Maddox was the axe man. Bo, what is the other guy, the old nasty white boy down there with the sheriff or something? Nick Thurman, all them guys. We've been through all of them. We've had the hoes. We've had the dogs. We've been beaten up to try to get a piece of cake at a sit-down counter. But what has happened, if you go back and look at all the film, if you go back and look at pictures of lynching of black men, what was white society were doing? They had lunch. They were sitting out looking at black men being whipped. And so what happens today? Them little ones that were sitting there looking are now big ones. They haven't changed their view. What is their world view? It's a black man
Why would
being
it change?
lynched.
Who's telling them what to change?
Right, it's right there. It's right there. Lester Maddox with his axe handles.
The axe handles? I don't remember.
Yeah, Lester Maddox used to make him walk around with an axe handle. Down in Georgia, Lester Maddox. He was a governor, I think, down in Georgia. I should know that. I worked in Georgia before I went to college. I worked as an elevator operator in one of the hotels where you crank the elevator. So I had the night shift. I'm sitting in the elevator, it's kind of quiet, and I'm reading a comic. This senator from Georgia, white guy, come in with state troopers. And which floor, sir? Tell him. Where are you doing? I said, I'm preparing to go to college. By reading a comic book? I said, well, it's kind of late. There's nothing else. He went on. I said, okay, fine. Crank him up, take him up to the floor. Okay, I said, he's on the 6th floor, right? How many people have I taken to the 6th floor tonight? Just one, just him, okay? I control this elevator. He doesn't. He punched the button. I opened the door to let him in. Man, okay. I crank it up, I drop it down. So when you come in, you don't look when you get in an elevator, you just assume it's even. I can control it. I drop that bad boy down. So when he stepped in for even, he went to hell. I said, oh, something is wrong. I'm sorry. Got your back. I ain't have to use no words or anything. I was in control of his giving me a no human response.
What must it feel like to be confronted by a power that you have no control over because of the color of your skin?
I think sometimes when you are confronted, or when I'm confronted by a white, today in our society, there is something called white privilege. You go into a store and they feel that they can just push their grocery bags right in front of you and get in line. Or they can bump into you walking. I'm walking down Washington, sometimes it's crowded. A couple of white women or white men walking. They just keep walking right into you. I'm not moving. I'm like, bam! Why do I have to move when you know that you too, all you gotta do is move over sometimes. I'm not gonna move over all my life. I've had to do that. So I'm gonna elbow you in your chest. If you're chest high with me, I'm gonna touch you to let you know, hey, I don't appreciate your thinking that you own the street. My buddy and I go skiing. Skied a lot. So where are we? We're in Connecticut, somewhere. We always go out west, but we are here, and it's morning, and we got on our ski clothing, my boots, my skis. This white woman comes up, said, "Can you get my luggage? Can you get my luggage? Do I look like I work here? I got on the same shit you got on." So when they hired me to wear ski boots and, just plain ignorant, all just privileged. It's not about being ignorant, it's about being privileged. He's black, what is he doing in here? We were out west. About 5 of us, we were living in this condo. We had to pay to live in there, same as this little white family did, had a couple of kids. They had a pool. It's winter, but the pool is cool. We come out from skiing, go get our beer, go down, sit at the pool, light up a cigar, chill out. We get headed down to the pool. They see us coming and get up and leave. And we said, "Oh, that's what you do, huh? So you will never get in the pool as long as we're here, because every day you're down sitting at the pool. Here we come. We ain't got loud music. We ain't yapping. We ain't rapping. We just bringing our drinks down with a cigar, cross our legs. You got keys? Cross our legs and smoke our cigars." So what happens? These Negroes are okay. They not bothering us. We can swim in the water. The water don't change color. The water ain't getting black. It's still that little old crispy looking water. And we can sit down and swim, and they can have a cigar. And, "Hey man, you want to smoke? Want a beer?" Those are the kinds of things that African Americans face today. And it's our responsibility as well as theirs to bridge this gap. You can bridge it with some you can't.
But so you feel it as a responsibility, not just like, I'm just living my life, but you have this responsibility every day to show the world that you're...
To ask why.
I'm sorry?
To ask why. I'm not... If you don't know who I am, and I don't know who you are, how can we communicate? We can't. We just pass each other by. You're white and I'm black, and we just pass each other by. And that's the norm at some point. If you can communicate, and you have to communicate knowing that sometimes your voice might be raised, your opinions are not going to be accepted, but you have to be able to dissect, decode information that's coming into you. And if you're not a good decoder, all the information that comes into you, you don't know what to do with it. You just sit there and look and stare and react to things that you think are harmful to your personal being. It's scary. It's scary.
What is scary? What's just talking to a new person, or just life in general?
I think the world in general right now is scary. You know, I think the world is scary. I think we are coming into an era in our lives that we don't know how this is going to end. We have an idea about how this is going to end, but we're not sure how this is going to end.
I mean, the Trump administration.
I'm not sure. It troubles me to think that someone on a platform talks about you and your family like a dog, call you stupid, calls you all kind of things, and then you suck up to him. Why? He just berated your whole family. Your kids probably watching. If you got kids here to watch, he's stepping on you. And all of a sudden you're over here licking up. Come on, get some balls. You know, say, I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm not going to. No, what happens is that you ascend to power and you probably carry that stuff with you, but then you still become a yes man. And I go to say, no, I'm not a yes man. I'm not a yes man. I'm not. One of my principal advisors, when I worked for, one of my supervisors, wanted me to do something at work, and I said, I can't do that. You know, you guys have to be responsible for my driving this van, and you don't have coverage, and you're not saying that if something happened. I was working at night. I can't drive the van. That was not in my job description. I volunteered, so I unvolunteered when I started working at night for a while. So I went in and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm endangering the lives of children that I work with. Now, if you want me to do it, then sign off on the responsibility that the agency is acquiring for me if I have an accident, if I get somebody hurt. I'm not responsible. The agency is. I can't do that. And I'm not driving. So she said, I was about to put you in for a grade, but I'm not going to submit the paperwork now. You know what I said to her? I survived before I knew your ass. I will survive after I leave your ass. So you can take that paperwork and do whatever you want to. My life does not depend upon your signature on that paperwork for me to survive. Hey, I'm not going to yes up because somebody's going to give me a little bit more money. I'm not going to sell my soul like a lot of these people are selling their souls today.
It's about personal responsibility, right? That what you're saying, each of us. So I think cultural change happens when we all take personal responsibility for saying no.
Teddy Pendergrass, in his song, Wake Up Everybody, No More Sleeping in Bed. We better wake up. Everybody needs to wake up. Everybody needs to wake up.
So, let me step back a little bit. So, I know you told me yesterday about seeing your father put his head, nod his head, tip his hat.
Two white women walking the streets, yeah.
So that's what I remember also about Jim Crow era. That would happen, and but so looking at it, let's say it's a flat line. If that was a really difficult era, do you see a line going, like a wave line, and where we are now compared to where you started in Jim Crow to where we are now? Where would you? Do you see it? Does it kind of go up and down and up and down and up and down, or is it gotten better, or?
It ain't gotten any better.
Not at all. I mean, you can live in this beautiful neighborhood. Could you live in this beautiful neighborhood 50 years ago?
Probably not. But
And send your kids to private schools and
historically, I didn't look at it that way. It's like, this house, I might not have been able to get it 50 years ago. I got it now. So what am I going to do with it now? I'm not going to try to go back in time all my life to bring myself to the present. The present has certain issues and problems that the past had and still have that I guess what I'm saying is that you basically can't live in the past. You can get information from the past and put it in a positive sense. So there's no need to go in the past and pull out negative stuff and try to correct it now. You have to I just don't go back and say, I know what happened for me from birth to now. But I'm not going to tread back to think that, well, this happened, so I'm upset about that. That has been solved in some manner, but there's still residue that's coming. So I have to be aware how to deal with this residue that's before me now, not the residue that's in the past so much. I've learned from that. I've learned that as a people, we have had many hurdles in our lives to hurdle over. And if you sometimes see a black person, they will say, we've been through that. We've gone through that. We've survived that.
And what does that mean to you?
That means that what we have encountered then is not what we're encountering now. Now is a new phase that we have to fight. We might still get the holes and the dogs, but that's in the past. We learned from that. Now we're looking at ice. That's a whole new generation of problems that has a history of itself. It is writing its own history. That history is in the past. So that's the way I look at things, What problems do I need to confront and solve to ensure that my family's well-being is okay, or my neighbors, or my culture, or my community's well-being. That's the
But everything's not a completely new experience. I experienced something similar with that, so I know how to use something of what I learned then to what I know, to what I'm experiencing now. Something of what I learned in Vietnam, I can
you pass that on. You pass that on to generations that have no idea about what occurred.
So you went to art school. When you came out of art school, I met you working. You had a studio in the building above the gallery where I was working, the studio gallery, which is across the street from the National Portrait Gallery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was working then with emotionally disturbed children.
At that point, you were already working. Mm-hmm. So you had gone to. So when you left art school, you didn't just devote yourself to art. You got a job with the government.
Yes.
So can you tell me about that?
I got a job with the government.
The U.S. government or state?
D.C. government on the federal side. I came in on a grant for years. And I worked as a crisis specialist for kids with emotional problems. When I came in, the director of the program sat down with me and we chit-chat and thought I had the ability to do the job. And then he had me trained from another organization that had a guy that was an expert in it. And after that, then I became the principal crisis specialist for emotionally disturbed children in a very small environmental school. And I did that for years and years and years. And then I was transferred to do, I worked in a, what did I go after that? I worked in a residential setting as a crisis specialist with older kids. And then I started to work as a mental health counselor with families and children. Worked as a residential placement specialist, transporting kids out of state to residential facilities. And I ended my career as a mental health counselor, working independently with families, doing counseling for individual and group counseling for families and their children.
So for the Maryland state, or this was still federal?
I worked in the district, not in Maryland. I only worked in Maryland after I retired, I worked as a sub worker for one school here in elementary school that I love dearly. You know, I worked with very difficult kids as a crisis specialist, you know, kids that will go off, throw chairs, have temper tantrums, and had to be restrained. But I used art as a tool for change for these kids. I remember one little white guy, hey James, wherever you are, I don't know his last name, but James was a white kid, and every day he came in, he had a crisis. Teacher called me, I go and get him, talk to him. Every day he had a crisis. So I said, I want to do something different with James today. So I got 3 large white sheets of paper. In my crisis room, I had a barber chair. Kids love to sit in and crank up the barber chair. I put 3 sheets of white paper, taped them onto the wall. I got a black crayon, and I think I just used a black crayon. And James came in. So I said,
how old was James?
Maybe 8 or 9. I can't remember now all the ages, but he was in that bracket. So James came in huffing and puffing, and so I said, today, James, take the crayon and go up and draw your feelings. What you feel like right now, draw it on that first sheet. Say, okay, come and sit down, take a breath, cool out for a minute. I go back and draw on the second sheet. How you feel now? Okay, come back and take a breath. On the third sheet, go back and draw what you feel now. Well, what happened between this, and this? You see, what you have learned today is which James do you prefer? Why? Because that's a calm James. Well, you know what? You can control and be that James every day. You don't have to be these 2. You can tear those 2 down. Only when you need to put them up, we'll put them up. But as of today, you're that James forever. You can control your feelings because you can talk. You can come in and sit down in my chair and say, I had a bad day today. I wanted peanut butter and jelly, but my mom only gave me peanut butter and made me mad. Okay, how can we handle that? How do you think we can handle that? Well, we can ask. James liked peanut butter and jelly. Are you willing to come in here and we sit down and make out what James liked so that James doesn't have to be angry all the time? Tell Mama how life is when you're so angry. How does that affect the family? When he's angry, you're upset because you got to deal with his anger. And he thinks you don't like him because you're sending him over here to me to help him deal with his anger, and you're not dealing with yours. So it's a combination of things. I did an arts class, an arts club rather. These kids were acting out. So I went to the teachers and said, during their free period, I don't have a class. I'm just open for whatever happens. If they have good behavior on their behavior sheets, I'm willing to bring them in and we'll start an arts class. Only if they have And I define what the behavior that I expected them to exhibit once they come to me. Okay, I got a couple of kids. Next time I got a couple more. Next time I got a couple more kids. All of a sudden, like, everybody's got good behavior because they want to come and hang out with me. So I said, okay, fine. What we're going to do, we're going to do poetry writing, and we're going to do artwork. And I am going to approach a gallery and see if they will give you an art show. Madam's Organ gave me an art show. Came in and told my principal, we got an art show. School can provide refreshments and cookies. We got a date. We're going to invite the parents. I'm going to hang the show. And you as artists can talk about your work. Because what has happened? You have transitioned from being angry to being an artist. You can be an angry artist, but you're using your energy to explore and express yourself. Those kids came to that opening with their parents with little suits on. Their parents had gone out and bought them suits and ties. And not only did we do the opening, a TV program found out about us and took some kids to TV. I mean, they were like, famous, man. They gonna act up and they gonna act up anymore. They were famous. Those that, everybody can't go, but a few of you can go and go over and practice reading your poetry. Talk about your work because that's what they want to hear. So I can be 90 years old and one of them kids recognize me. Mr. Marshall, I remember when you did the art show. Because I took something away, but I gave them a replacement. So I love working with kids. I love work because they are available to learn. They are available to make mistakes. They are available to understand how to correct mistakes. They are how to appreciate your fellow student, how not to be critical. The elementary school art program I did, we had equipment, but we didn't have a lot of space, so everybody got their own stuff. So I would put 3 kids to a canvas, 3 kids to a canvas, 3 kids. I didn't overwhelm them. Okay, there are certain rules here. You 3 are working on this one canvas to complete one painting. Your masterpiece is right here. The 3 of you going to complete one masterpiece that I'm going to hang in the hallway of the school. So how are we going to deal with that? You got spatial problems. One person might be doing something totally different. So you have to say, I think if you might want to change that color to gray because it matches a color over here. But it's how you speak, how you get people to cooperate. This is a group of cooperation. We're not talking about, I don't like that, I'm going to get up and leave. No, we're not going to tear up. We're not going to get up and leave. We're going to open communication. Because what you're doing is that you're encouraging someone else to develop a good quality about themselves and their work. So when I hang this work on the wall and you pass it in the morning, put your chest out because you deserve that. And when you go home and tell your mom that when she picks you up from school, you can bring her and show her your work. And I did this, Mom, with da. So now I can go home and work with my brothers and sisters. Why? Because I'm learning how to work with. I'm learning how to communicate. I'm learning how to say, I don't like this. I don't feel good about what you say. This does not make me feel good about myself, when you talk to me that way. The I part is most important. I think that, not we, John, Henry, no, I think that we can change this. You and I can change it. So you give them words to use. You give them permission to use your experience in life. And you model the behavior. I don't go in yelling and screaming. I sit there calm and say, okay, work it out. Let me know there's an issue that you can't work out. Let's move over here and discuss it. But you discuss it. I'm listening. I'm going to listen. And you're going to make the changes that are necessary by discussing it and coming to some consensus about what it is that you're trying to do. Is there a theme here? Is it music? Is it water? What is it? You all got to decide what you're working on. So then, it's a cohesive. So I enjoy working with the kids because kids will tell the truth. In most cases, they will tell the truth. It's the adults that are dishonest. We are dishonest people. We hide a whole lot of stuff in our lives because we don't want people to open up and see the real us. I always say all of us wear masks. We all hide behind masks. You hide behind them, I hide behind them. The whole world hide behind masks. Because if we are unmasked, we have no idea what's going to flow out. So the mask is like Snoopy's blanket. It's a safety valve. One summer, I went to Buffalo, Lackawanna, working the Ford Motors, Bethlehem Steel. I worked in the steel mill for a summer when I was in college in Georgia. And I befriended a person that was enrolled at the University of Buffalo. So she said, I got to go enroll if you want to come with me. She's trying to persuade me to leave Albany State and come to Buffalo. So she was going to show me Buffalo University of Buffalo. But she said, because I'm registering, you might want to go to the museum. So I walked down to the museum. I think it was the Knox Albright Museum. And there as I walk in, is this huge painting of William de Kooning, Woman One. And I was like, wow, a real painting. I've never seen a real painting. I've seen Cedarburg painted, but I've never seen a real professional artist painting, hanging in a museum. So I'm just standing there and my mouth is open. I'm just staring at it. Boy, look, wow, how did he do that? How did he do that? Although my grandmama had deceased, she tapped me on my shoulder. She said, boy, you know what you're looking at? I'm looking at Woman One. She said, no, you're looking at my quilt. That's all it is. It's my quilt. He just got brush strokes. Rather than sewing it together, he just quilted it out. It's your quilt. You know what it is. It's not a big surprise. It's my quilt. You watch me quilt all my life. This is my quilt. Oh, I can do that for my grandmama's quilt. So that's what I do here, my grandmama's quilt. I don't come in and take a sketch and sketch out this stuff and I gotta pick this color and all this color. See all my colors back here? I just squeeze them out. Sometimes I got a little palette. Sometimes this is my mixing bowl. Sometimes that piece of paper right there, a trash bag is my mixing bowl. I just sit down here on the floor, mix up, start painting. And before I start a series of works, I have a narrative that I have in my mind. And I might go over that narrative several days. And I need to find the beginning of the story that I'm about to tell. So I get the title. And so what is the title of my book? And how do I want my illustration of the cover to look? That is my beginning painting. So I finished that one. I'm gonna look at it. Okay, it's chapter 1. I gotta go to chapter 2. I gotta carry this story on until I say it's finished. And Cedarburg always said to me, he said, you will know when your work is finished when you can breathe. Look at it. And if you can breathe, it's finished. If you look at it, it's not finished. Go back, let it sit. I go to sleep and I finish it. Sometimes in my sleep, I'll go to sleep and I'll say, okay, I need to do that. So I get up in the morning and come down here and do it. Even if I have to change some pieces I work on a long time because I can't breathe. So if I can breathe, it's finished. And the chapter is finished. So that's basically how I do my work. I'm always fascinated what comes out. It's unplanned. It's putting a piece here. It's putting a piece there. But when I'm working, I'm going to work until I get to the end of that chapter with that particular piece. And if I have to go back and make adjustments, I'll do that. Now, for me, that down here, watch yourself, that's my masterpiece in the gazebo there.
Oh, I couldn't see that one from the angle where I was
you can
before.
walk down if you want to get closer.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll use the steps here. This is my king and queen. My African king and the queen. They don't have titles.
They don't have titles?
I didn't title this as this.
Oh, none of your pieces have titles.
No, they're just here. This is my masterpiece here.
Oh, so these are not just auto parts. These have faces and
I got a piece
personalities.
of African sculpture. I use styrofoam heads. I've done some bronzing, but I use the styrofoam. I like the way that they mature. The ones there, I just keep them out in the weather, and eventually it molds a personality into them. This one is encased or enclosed in a kind of controlled environment the rain can't get to and stuff. So there's a difference in the face. And she has welding or what is that the guy was putting up? Gutter nails in her. I mean, I use anything that I can find, and if it works, I'll try it. You know, I've learned to, when I go get auto parts, to not get things that are oily because it smoke up the class. I weld like in an area that I can let up the garage door, and it's almost a private area that I have beyond. The classroom is here and my area is back here. So I go in and suit up, and they see me when I get ready to leave. See me when I come in and say hello, and see me when I get ready to leave and say goodbye. Unless I have to use the bathroom. Nobody really bothers me, except for once we had a critique, and we had to bring the piece in and talk about it. And I don't know which piece it was. It was, people look at things in a European way, Western culture. It's supposed to be this way. You're supposed to be able to walk around and see it. You're supposed to. I'm like, look, man, I'm black. I ain't walking around shit to be like, honestly. If I have to base my work on someone else's opinion, then why be an artist? Let somebody else do it for you. You have to be emboldened with who you are. You have to have a great personality in terms of you have to have good self-esteem and good self-worth. You have to look at your culture in terms of how it nurtures you to the point that you get to in your adult life from childhood. And it teaches you to be strong and independent about things that you believe strongly in. That's taught. So I believe in what I do and what others say. I learned long ago to take criticism. Otherwise, you and I would not be standing here, because people can say some really interesting things about what you do, and if you like fall down on the job and nobody picks you up, and I've learned that it's important to have great self-esteem in this business. I'm sure in any profession, but in this business, I had a show, and this guy was impressing his girlfriend, And he said, "Oh, it looks like somebody in high school did this." And when I didn't know he had gone to the bathroom, so I went into the bathroom and said, "Oh, how do you like the show?" He said, "Oh, it was like da da da." I said, "Oh, thank you. I'm the artist, and I'm an elementary school guy. I'm just in the second grade, and I did that in the second grade. So thank you for your comment." Let him pee all over himself. Oh, man. But I was at Albany State College in Albany, Georgia, after the military. And I really got into art in an unusual way because of the military serving in Vietnam. I was accustomed to the monsoon season. So when it would rain on campus, I would sit underneath this huge oak tree. It was like a chair was provided in there. I would sit there. And eventually students would come by and say, "Are you an art major?" I was like, "No, I'm a sociology major." And then one afternoon, some young ladies came by and said, "Are you an art major?" I said, "Why do you ask me? Why people keep asking me? I don't ask anyone that passed me by, 'Hey, what's your major?' I don't ask that. So why?" I said, "Because you act like Ohm Cedarberg, who's a painter and art instructor." I said, I took art history from him. Didn't understand a word he said. I took art history from him. He's Korean. And so eventually, I kind of walked over to the studio there, to the art department, and asked the chairman of the department if it was okay during my class breaks that I could come in and kind of work, not as a student, but just as an outsider for an hour or so. He said, "Sure, come in. Maybe you would like." So I went in and I started working with clay. We didn't have a chem. It was a small art department. So we didn't have equipment that maybe some other art departments had. So it was basically self-hardening clay, a small etching. You etched on a piece of paper like that. That was as large as you can go. And then I didn't like any of that. So eventually I went over to Ohm Cedarberg's space. He had a nice studio. It's a large abstract painter. Stuff was so thick on the canvas, probably stayed off from the canvas like that. I said, "God, how much paint are you using?" But Ohm was a great mentor. That I came through during the time of the Black Panther movement, the uprise of the civil rights movement. So of course I went and wanted to paint fists and up there. I can't even draw a man with his fist up, but that was I gotta get in here and do this. I'm like, sit down, relax, and let's just talk. And that was the man who taught me and helped me to develop a sense of self, a good self-esteem, self-worth. This is what you will confront if you pursue this course as an artist. People are not gonna praise you and pat you on the shoulder every time you put a piece of paint to a canvas. They're not gonna do that. So if you can conceive an idea and you follow through on that idea and it's yours and you take ownership, fine. That's what you have produced. That's yours. It's yours. Claim it. It's yours. Doesn't belong to anybody else. It's yours. No matter what criticism comes, it's yours. So I've learned to appreciate the time he spent with me and the teachings and the lessons really that he gave me and the kind of motivation and instilled in me a sense of, who I am and what I need to do if I wanted to be successful. And it has helped me. When I was at the Whitney Museum in New York, some of the instructors didn't know how to respond to what I was doing. They walked by and said, "Oh, you're a prolific artist." I said, "What that means?" Damn, what is he saying? I'm famous? I don't know what the hell he's talking about. But, they never kind of said, "Oh, you maybe need to do this or need to do that or need to change this or that, maybe. And I just walked by and said, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Oh, thank you, Ohm. Thank you. I'm good. I can manage a year here. Not a problem. If you never say anything to me, I'll be okay." So I lasted a year there, but getting there was probably it was an
A year
anger.
in Georgia at the
Oh,
or at the Whitney.
I was in Maryland Institute when I went to the Whitney in Baltimore.
Okay, so the year was in Georgia.
It was Cedarburg
With,
was in Albany State College, Albany, Georgia.
oh.
Yeah, and then I migrated to Washington and was accepted at the Institute. And I did my undergrad degree there as well as master's there. And ask me today what my master's degree is, I don't know. I haven't seen it since they gave it to me. That's been 50 years ago. Like, can you produce your master's degree? I have to go in and Xerox something and say, here it is. But the guy from Yale, a recruiter, I'm not sure, I'm getting, from Yale came through, walked through our studio area, looked at all the work, left. So the president calls me to his office, president of the college, President Leak, I think it was, called me to the office, sat me down and said, I have some good news for you. Black man sitting in the white man's office with good news. Ain't nobody hiding behind there with no hoods on. I'm good. Okay, tell me about it. He said, you have been selected from a random selection of students, not just from the Institute, but wherever he's visiting, to go to Yale to study for a year. Where's Yale? No, I don't know where Yale is. Man, I'm just getting to Baltimore. Am I going to Yale? Congratulations. So, okay, fine. I go and call my buddy Curtis. Man, I'm going to Yale, man. Let's go have a jack on that. So about a week later, he called me back into the office. Sit down in the same chair. He says, I have some bad news for you. Bad news what? You're not going to be going to Yale. Well, you sat me down in the chair and said I was selected to go to Yale. So now I'm sitting in the same chair and not going. What happened? The head of that department, I always know, Abby Sangiamo. Hey, black guy ain't going to Yale. He sent a white guy. I said, the boy can't paint worth his shit. If he could, they would have selected him. So he is sending someone that was not selected over me that was selected. He said, well, I don't have any powers to change that. Are you the president? You can change it. Okay.
What year was this?
I am really mad. I called Curtis. I said, Curtis is my alter ego. I said, Curtis, come down, man. You know what they just did to me? So, Gene, I had this exhibition. I was in an exhibition at the campus. I had this large painting. As soon as you walk into the exhibition area, I went down on a Friday. I took it off the wall. They said, where you going? I said, this is my damn painting. Do not question me at this moment in your life because I am extremely upset. So Curtis and I sat on the hill and he kind of got me down, quieted me down. And then I had to eat cheese and take the painting back because I had nowhere to take it. So I was like, damn, man. To drag this out. But I did. One afternoon, Sangiamo was kind of walking towards me and I'm walking towards him. And I look around to see if there are any other people involved. And I just politely said, I'm a trained killer. United States Army trained me to kill. I have killed people in Vietnam. So if I ever see you off campus, remember, I'm trained. Just like you're a trained painter, I'm a trained killer. If I ever see you off campus, I'm going to paint a masterpiece. Every time he saw me, he'd be going. But then President Whitney Independent Study guy came down. Diaz. I always liked him. Walked through the studio again. President calls me in the office. I said, what are you calling me in for? I've been in here twice. This is my third trip here. Am I going to get to home base or am I going to be out on third base? Just say you're out on third base so I can go. He said, nope, you were selected to go to the Whitney Independent Studio in New York. The last time I was in this chair running the home plate, I was out. So what's the deal? He said, no, you're going. You are going. You're going. And we're going to give a little funds to you, get you started. You're going. He said, I was real sorry about what happened to you before. So I ended up going to New York for a year to study. And he asked me, is there anything else that I can help you with? I said, you can write my mom a letter and let her know that I'm going to be okay. Because I didn't grow up in my community in the South. We didn't know anything about art or artists. The only artwork I saw was Jesus on a fan. And that was hot in church, and you fan with Jesus. I was like, I'm blessed, man. I'm fanning with Jesus in church, man. Hey, gosh, that was it. So he wrote her a very nice letter and told her about the Whitney. It was a prestigious institution, and I was selected out of I don't know how many other artists to study there. And I think one afternoon I got this, before going, I got this packet in the mail, and my mom had posted it in the newspaper. Had a photograph of me in the paper going to the Whitney. I'm like, well, how many people in Vienna, Georgia knows where the Whitney is? What is the Whitney? But she was quite proud, and I think that was kind of a common grace for her to accept the fact that I would be okay. And so I did a year at the Whitney. It was an interesting environment. I was the only African American on the program. But again, Cedarburg's lessons kind of blossomed. Say, hey, you're going to be okay. You can depend upon your creativity. You can depend upon yourself. You don't have to be anointed to be okay. Anoint yourself. Pat yourself on the back. There's a beat. We can go up. They down here.
So how do you think your life compares with that of your parents? What was your parents?
Gosh, it's like night and day. My parents were domestic workers. Both parents were not educated, but managed to buy us a home, maintain that home until their death.
Domestic workers, they
worked in white people's house, ironing, washing clothing, doing whatever. Managed to have all of us get education. My sisters were doctors and doctor of education and teach in the county until they deceased or retired. I am honored to have been born into the family. I have no regrets of the family's lifestyle or what I understood was not maybe a spoken statement, but one example by doing, by being labeled as an underachiever and then raising a family. And your mom and your dad could sit on the back porch and say, that's my daughter who's a doctor. That's my daughter who's a teacher there. That's my, and having my mom and dad die with a smile, knowing that they did the very best that they could, and the very best that they could moved away from their lifestyle to become independent kids. So what more could you ask of your parents than that? Protect you, they did that. Support you, they did that. Beat your butt, they did that. But also loved you unconditionally. Never questioned it. I was not the best kid in the flock. Let me just kind of, Veterans Affair. Tell me I got an appointment Friday. You know, I was kind of stubborn. I always thought that I could do things my way. I listened to advice and fairly used it when I thought it was necessary. A rebellious kid. I was rebellious. And I think being rebellious has an advantage.
So you're talking about being at grandmom's house doing all this.
Yeah, so my mom prepared me for life, taught me how to cook, take care of myself, cook, clean, you know, because her thing was with me, I don't know if you're going to marry or you're going to be single, but in any case, if you're married and if you're single, you know how to take care of yourself. You don't really have to depend upon someone else to make your life worthwhile. You can do it yourself. And so I've learned to do that. You know, I don't belong to any art groups. I've been able to get my work into museums. I've been able to do group shows. I've been able to be successful as an artist, to get my work in books. I got my work in several movies. And I don't have to answer to anyone. You know, I had an agent. I respect her. We still communicate. She's not able to rep me because of the pandemic and financial strains on her. Had to close her shop. A couple other people I was with had to close their shop. So I'm basically thankful for what I've been able to do as a late bloomer in the arts. I'm appreciative of that. I appreciate that people like my work, like it enough to purchase it, like it enough to house it in their collections. In fact, I'm in a traveling exhibition collection there. I didn't know I was in the exhibition until I asked the guy to come and take a peek at some work that I'm doing. He said, "Oh, I should have brought you a catalog, a book rather. A book for what?" He said, "Oh, you in my traveling?" I'm like, "What? I don't know. I've had work to go up for auction. I never know. I never know where the work is. Once somebody buys the work, I don't know what happens to it. I don't follow it. I just, you know, somebody calls me and say, da, da, da. I'm like, okay. I just met this young lady 3 days ago, who had purchased my work, whose kids are not collecting from her. Walk up and say, "I'm coming to visit because I need some more work." I was like, wow, okay. You know, I'm available, I'm open.
Well, so you've been retired how long?
Oh, I don't know, 15, 20 years. I've been retired a long time.
Oh, you have? Well, I didn't realize it had been so long. So you've been really painting full time since then?
I never stopped painting, even though I worked for the government. I never identified myself as a crisis specialist when we went out to conference and stuff, and you have to name tag yourself what you do. I never wore that. They give me, I don't need that. I know what I do. I know who I am.
But you didn't, I mean, you were working two jobs, so you were painting and working with the school. So you were, I mean, now you're able to paint a lot more than you did then, clearly. So,
Not really.
No?
I do paint more, but it wasn't, I mean, I got my master's degree. I was still working for the government. And they allowed me to go 1 day or 2 days on my own personal leave. So I went to the Institute while I was still working for the government and got my master's under Grace Hardigan. But I was still working, you know. I've never given up work. I mean, I've had exhibitions while I'm working. I come and work on them. And it's a full time. Yeah, okay, I will say full time. I just work when I feel like it, but I work all the time, so it's full time. I just have ideas, so I come out here and work. work in the winter out here. The wife was always on me about being cold out here with no heat. And my excuse, I said, well, there's a homeless person somewhere sleeping under a blanket on the street. And he's got on gloves and 3 or 4 jackets and a hat. I'm fortunate. I can work out here in the cold, open the door, go in and get me a hot chocolate and come back. I can go sit down and get some heat and come back. I can choose. I got a heater over there. I got a little fan over there. I can choose to be warm out here if I wanted to. But hey, I'm thinking of that guy or that woman that's on the street. I think as an artist, for myself, I don't speak for any other artist. For myself, I think it's identifying with events that are worse than the situation that you're in and trying to put yourself into that person's footsteps. And you become, I think the work becomes more emotionally involved because it is taken on the persona of someone else. It's not just my idea. In Cuba, my first trip to Cuba, Curtis and I were down there with another friend. And he and we kind of toured around the first time we went. But one night especially, we were, I call it the water wall. It has a name, but I call it the water wall, where it was dark and we were standing out smoking. Cigars, not joints, not down there and get arrested. And the water was gushing over the seawall. And we were standing because we had planned to sit there and it was gushing over, this raging water. And I looked at Curtis and said, can you imagine that someone is out there maybe tonight or early morning in a dinghy trying to get 93 miles to Florida? Curtis, you went to Vietnam on a ship. I flew. What was it like on a ship, on a big ship on the ocean? And he talked about that experience, how the waves sometimes they had to go down and lock down for safety purposes because the ship was. And I said, now, if you can imagine that thing being that heavy and people are out there without walls and crowded onto a homemade dinghy, can you imagine? Can you imagine that? Can a person sitting up there somewhere who's saying, oh, we don't want you, can they imagine the courage that it takes to take a child, lap him, and not knowing if they're going to make that 93 miles? That person is a damn hero. The person who says you got to go back is shit. Because they have not experienced that. They have not, I don't even know if they imagine that. What it takes to bring a child. I looked at this documentary and it was of Haiti. And these people were coming to America. They were just on the sides holding on. And I'm like, if that boat gonna make it out of 10 feet in the water? All these people are crowded on. The closing of Vietnam, when they were airlifting out, people hanging on to the airplane. Can you imagine?
Well, and imagining what the circumstances were that made them so desperate to do that.
It is when you live in fear all the time, it is necessary, I think, to unfear. And unfearing is taking a risk. You risk going to something better because you have heard that if you get to America, it's the land of Golden Street and apple pie. Could be the fantasy, but that's what you've heard. So you try to reach out and get to that land. That's like with, if you get to heaven, the streets are paved in gold. White House is in gold. thinks he's in heaven because he's got all the gold. Okay, I had to say that quietly. Thinks he's in heaven. So you digest those fears, and you take the risk because something is better on the other side. They always say grass. You think grass is greener on the other side, but it is walking through their village. It is looking into their homes and seeing absolutely nothing. It is walking the streets and saying, "Wow, how do they live here?" You know.
You're talking about Cuba.
I'm talking about Cuba. Mm-hmm. How do all these years that we have constantly put an embargo on them? If a person don't have a piece of cheese to eat, how in the hell do they have a terrorist weapon sitting there? It doesn't make sense. It does. Our system doesn't make sense. I can understand if you're saying that, okay, people that's committing crimes, that are killing people, okay, have them a trial. If they find guilty, then do something. We just don't grab them up and say, "Oh, you're a criminal." You know, do you have a record? "Oh, I'm gonna grab your gene today. You're a criminal." I don't know if your records and stuff, But anyway, once you see that, once Curtis and I had that conversation, I was like, man, this is incredible. These people are incredible to risk the ocean. So when I got home, I started this Cuba artwork.
Is all this behind you now, Cuba?
Some of this is, not all of it. Like some is Cuba. The ones downstairs are all Cuba. But I don't say Cuba anymore. I say the crisis of immigration, the journey of hope, of faith. They've come to the land of opportunity by faith. Once you step on that boat, you're on faith. You're looking for high authorities to help you make that long journey. You don't know if you're going to make it there or not.
But you're not just in this work about Cuba isn't just, knowing
not just about Cuba.
Right. It's about you, and it's about your grandmother. It's about African Americans. It's about hope in general and adversity.
It's pretty much not about all of that. It's about immigration. It is about the treatment of people who are trying to make a better life for themselves.
Do you identify with that for yourself,
I identify that as a person who thinks human life is precious. The treatment of others is precious. And once you sink the ship, all those that were not able to escape drowns. And that's what we are probably doing. We're just sinking the ships, and we don't care if they drown or not, because we have been told that they are interfering with our lifestyle. Like the lies they told about Haitians eating animals. And what happened? Everybody from 5 million miles away come into this town, the police, because some liar said that people were eating dogs and cats. Did anybody ever see anybody eat a dog or a cat? I doubt it. But the rumor mill started that people are doing dogs and cats, and so white male Americans got their guns and brought fear into people whose lives they affected immediately. ICE affect lives immediately. People scared to go out. You know what black people are saying? I guess they're going to try to get us to Africa next. Or they want a whole white society. Yeah. And if you ain't got no money, you might as well join in and going to Africa. Well, he ain't black. Well, I ain't got no money, boss. I got to go somewhere. Where they going? Where are they think they are going? If they don't, in white society, they are layers. there's one society of whites that you're never going to get into. Your skin color is not going to get you there. That's old, I call it old money. Old money white. You ain't going to never get there. I don't care. You ain't going to never get there. They ain't going to open the doors and say, come in because you're white. And
Well, they're never going to get there. Where is there? What do you mean? Where is there?
It's living in billionaire row, I'm going to say. The old country clubs. You got to be, your family got to be in part of that. And, you know, that kind of. And Hillary Clinton said, and then people got upset about it. And she called it trailer trash. Where you going? Where you going? If you think that you send all the immigrants away, and if you start trying to send us away, are you going to come over here and take my house? Then how are you going to pay the mortgage? How are you going to pay the electric? How are you going to do this or that? And if you weren't better off during the first segment of this history, are you better off now, or are you going to be better off later? Because I passed some houses. I'm like, wow, he's still flying the American flag, and I love this particular person, and the shit falling down. It was falling down years ago when I passed, and it's almost gone now, but it got that American flag, because I'm better than the person that you're sending back. That's a big B probably. He's taking my job. You know, he ain't taking your job. You didn't want to work it. You know, the guy who comes in and does the lawn, he is Hispanic. I've never seen a white guy come by and hand out a flyer here and say, you know, and I can do your yard for you for $1. Ain't gonna do that. You know, come by here and say, well, how you get that house? Work for it. I had a BMW once. I was coming home. White guy pulled up on me in a truck. That's a nice car. Thank you. How much did it cost? It's a nice car. How you get that car? I stole it. How can you afford to drive a car like that when I'm driving a ragged ass truck? How can you afford to drive this truck? Okay. Oh, that's a nice looking truck. I bet that's expensive. You need any work done? This white guy, you need any work done? I said, now I got to take that money and pay for my truck. Why can't I have a truck? Why can't I have a nice BMW? Why you got to question me about that? You know? So I just like, okay, yeah, I stole it, I go on. Like my grandson is white. My son married a white female. I'm walking him one day, and this guy, he always sees me walk the dog, comes out. It's a nice guy. I know he's a Republican. Let's go, okay. So I'm walking my little grandson up one day, and he comes out and he's looking. I said, shh, I stole him. You want to buy him? You want to buy him? He's cheap. I'll sell him to you right now. Getting exhibitions are great. I mean, I never thought that I would have gotten this far in the art world as I have. I never thought that. I kind of dreamed of what it would be like to be an important artist. But then to start making little strides to get to that final ladder rung on the top of the ladder, I never kind of looked at that. Always being whatever you get, be appreciative of that. And if you don't get to be in the New York Times, it's okay. You know, the kid that comes by and look in and say, oh, I like that. That's the New York Times. You know, not somebody criticized. It's nice to have your work criticized. It's nice to have people in, can I say, of places of influence to move your work. It's nice to have those pieces, but they're not available. Oh, so be it. I enjoy what I do. And I do it because at some point it reaches some emotional part of someone's life, you know. That's what I get. That's the satisfaction I get. Yeah, I'm good with that.